you just heard are not myths. They are echoes from incidents recorded within the NightHowl files, events that blur the line between predator and prey, legend and evidence. Tonight, we unseal a sequence of files concerning the most enduring and territorial of all nocturnal entities, the ancient vampire lineages. These 5 accounts span the globe, from forgotten mountain passes to isolated islands shrouded in mist. Each file represents a community that does not merely fear the night. It answers to it. These are places where the harvest, the law, and the very flow of life are dictated by a will that has endured for centuries. A will that thirsts. Before we begin, subscribe to NightHowl Files and activate notifications. What we reveal here is not fiction, it is testimony. And you won't want to miss what's uncovered next. Case File NHF 118. The Granary of Tears, Valea, Umbrei, Romania. The village of Valea, Umbrei lies in a high Carpathian basin, accessible only by a single road that switchbacks up a treacherous mountainside. According to our field agent's initial report, dated October 17, 1983, the community of 300 appeared idyllic, almost anachronistic. They farmed rocky soil, raised hardy sheep, and preserved traditions forgotten by the outside world. Their prosperity, however, was singularly tied to their granary, a vast stone structure older than the village itself, which perpetually yielded a surplus of perfect, unblemished wheat, even in the leanest years. The villagers were healthy, but quiet. Their eyes held a perpetual, weary gratitude. They spoke of their benefactor, the Stepan, the master, only in hushed tones after sundown. Agent's log, Day 3. The agent noted the village's peculiar method of tithe. It was not paid in coin or crop, but in labor. Every full moon, a single family was required to spend the night within the granary, tasked with blessing the seed. They would emerge at dawn, pale and withdrawn, offering no details. The agent's interest was piqued when he observed the selected family, the Ionescus, preparing for their duty. The mother was silently weeping. The father's hands trembled as he packed a small bag not with tools, but with linens and a vial of what appeared to be lavender oil. Over the next week, the agent documented the sounds that echoed from the granary after dark. Not of rodents, but a soft, rhythmic scraping, like stone being dragged across stone. The air around the structure carried a scent not of rot and grain, but of dry dust and cold, spent incense. He interviewed the Ionescu family days after their service. They were courteous but hollow, their words rehearsed. The youngest daughter, however, in a moment of unguarded terror, whispered to the agent, "The man in the walls doesn't like the light. He's so cold, and he sings to my dolly when he thinks I'm sleeping." On the night of November 2nd, driven by a compulsion he could not explain, the agent bypassed the heavy locks and entered the granary. His flashlight beam cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating not piles of grain, but a vast, open space at the center. The floor was inlaid with a complex mosaic of spirals and ancient symbols, stained a deep, permanent brown. And in the center of it all, nestled within a stone sarcophagus that was seamlessly integrated into the foundation, lay the Stepan. It was a desiccated, mummified figure, draped in funeral silks, its skin like parchment stretched over bone. As the agent watched, frozen, the creature's eyes opened, revealing orbs of solid, polished jet. It did not move, but a voice, dry as shifting sand, echoed directly inside the agent's mind. You are not of the tribute. You disturb the equilibrium. Your blood will salt the earth for a season. Agent's final transmission was fragmented. He spoke of a pressure in his skull and a cold that seeped into his bones. Local authorities, acting on an anonymous tip, found the granary empty and the agent's belongings neatly packed in his rented room. He was declared a missing person. The official record states he likely fell victim to a bear. The village of Valea, Umbrei continues to thrive. Their exports remain of exceptional quality. The file has been sealed under the Blood Soil Pact. The entity, codenamed Geophage, is considered a territorial non-aggressor. Direct intervention is deemed a catastrophic destabilization risk. The village is monitored annually. The equilibrium, however vile, holds. But the mountains of Romania are not the only prisons for such ancient hungers. Our next file takes us across the world, to a chain of islands where the sea itself obeys a different master. Case File NHF 155. The Crimson Tide of Kuroshio, Japan. The Kuroshio archipelago is a spray of volcanic islands south of Tokyo, known for their violent, beautiful seas and a fishing yield that defies all marine biology estimates. Our contact was a disgraced oceanographer, Dr. Kenji Sato, who in the winter of 2019 sent a series of encrypted messages to a dead-drop server we maintain. He was investigating the anomalous phosphorescence in the waters surrounding the main island's harbor. The locals, he wrote, were fiercely protective and secretive. Their leader was not a mayor, but the head of the Himura family, a reclusive widow who was never seen in daylight. The fishermen returned each dawn with holds bursting with fish, their nets glistening with a faint, pinkish residue. Dr. Sato's third message contained a water sample analysis. The phosphorescence was not biological. It was a microscopic, suspended particulate of a complex organic compound, a substance with properties similar to hemoglobin, but exponentially more stable and potent. He also noted the island's one peculiar law. Every firstborn child, upon reaching maturity, was required to spend one night in the Himura estate overlooking the sea. They returned changed, serene, with a faint, cold scent of salt and ozone clinging to their skin. Sato's later communications grew increasingly frantic. He documented the sounds from the Himura estate, not conversations, but a low, resonant humming that seemed to vibrate through the very rock of the island, a sound that synchronized with the tides. He described the smell that rolled off the mansion during the new moon, not of decay, but of a deep, metallic salt, like a copper coin dipped in the ocean's abyss. He once saw the widow Himura standing on her balcony at twilight, and swore that the shadows of the gulls flying overhead bent towards her, as if pulled by a gentle gravity. Sato's final transmission was an audio file, recorded on a hydrophone lowered into the harbor at midnight. The sounds are profane. Below the normal sounds of the sea, one can hear a slow, viscous churning and a wet, rhythmic pulsing like a massive heart. And then, a voice, composed of 1,000 whispering currents, speaks in perfect, archaic Japanese. The little scientist listens from the world above. You chart the veins of my body. Do you wish to see the heart? Come. The tide is accepting. The recording ends with a sudden, violent surge of water and Dr. Sato's choked, final scream, followed by the sound of crushing depth. Dr. Kenji Sato was officially lost at sea during a sudden squall. His research boat was found adrift, empty. The Himura family issued a statement of condolence. The fishing yields in Kuroshio remain unparalleled. The water still glows pink on certain nights. This file is classified under Abyssal Protocol. The entity, codenamed Sanguine Tide, is assessed as a territorial apex predator with a symbiotic relationship to the human population. It does not hunt them, it cultivates them. All further investigation is suspended. Some gardens, no matter how horrifying, are best left untended. Case File NHF 192. The Silent Choir of Glen, Cailleach, Scotland. Nestled in a deep highland glen that sees the sun for barely an hour each winter day, the village of Glen, Cailleach is a place of stone and silence. Our source was a folklorist, Alara MacLeod, who in 2015 returned to her ancestral home to document its unique oral traditions. She found a community that communicated as much through subtle hand gestures and the hanging of specific colored cloths as with words. The village was ruled by a council of 7 elders, all from the same ancient family, the Drummonds. They were pale, impossibly long-lived, and possessed a chilling, harmonious beauty. The village had no church, but a standing stone circle at the glen's head, where the elders would gather at night. In her 3rd week, Alara began to notice the absences. There were no infants crying. No children played in the narrow lanes. When she inquired, she was met with placid, rehearsed answers about a boarding school on the mainland. Yet, she found a single small shoe, weathered and old, wedged between 2 rocks near the stone circle. That night, she recorded a faint, high-pitched sound, like the distant, distorted singing of a choir of children, emanating from the direction of the elder's manor. The next morning, the recording was full of static, save for one clear, whispered word in a child's voice, "Hush!" Alara's notes describe a growing sense of wrongness. The air in the glen was perpetually still and carried the scent of wet stone and frost-blighted heather, even in summer. The villagers moved with a quiet, fluid grace, their footsteps making no sound on the gravel paths. She once observed an elder, a man who looked no older than 40, standing at the edge of the woods. A rabbit, frozen in fear, allowed the man to stroke its head before he simply looked at it. The creature fell dead, its eyes clouded. Alara wrote, "It is not that they take life. They seem to command silence itself, and life simply ceases its noise." Driven by a need for proof, Alara hid within the stone circle on the night of the winter solstice. What she witnessed was not a feeding, but a ritual. The 7 Drummond elders stood in a circle, their mouths open, but no sound came out. Instead, the very air grew heavy and cold. From the village, a procession of the youngest adults walked in a trance, each leading a single, silent child by the hand. As they reached the circle, the elders' silent song intensified. A faint, silver mist, a condensation of pure vitality, began to weep from the eyes and mouths of the children, flowing into the open mouths of the elders. The children did not cry out. They did not struggle. They simply grew paler, quieter, their vibrancy draining away until they were as placid and silent as the rest of the villagers. One of the elders turned its head and looked directly at Alara's hiding place. Its eyes were the color of a winter sky, and in the perfect silence, a voice formed in her mind. "You break the quiet. You will learn the peace of it." Alara MacLeod fled Glen Cailleach at dawn. She mailed her journal and a single photograph of the stone circle to a NightHowl affiliate before checking into a hostel in Inverness. She was found the next day, sitting peacefully in a chair by the window. She was clinically alive, her heart beating a slow, steady rhythm, but her mind was utterly, permanently vacant. No amount of stimulus can elicit a response. The doctors have no diagnosis. The village of Glen Cailleach remains silent. The census shows no one under the age of 18 has resided there for over 50 years. This file is sealed under the Stillness Accord. The entities, codenamed the Hushed, are considered a parasitic sessile intelligence. They do not consume blood, but the potential for sound and chaos inherent in youthful life. Extraction of the affected is impossible. The Glen is now marked on our maps as a zone of permanent acoustic quarantine. But the hunger for essence takes many forms. From the silent glens of Scotland, we cross to the oppressive heat of the South American interior, where a different kind of vitality is harvested. Case File NHF 210. The Sunken Cathedral of San Jerónimo, Bolivia. The mission of San Jerónimo was established in the 17th century in a remote river basin of the Bolivian Amazon. According to colonial records, it was abandoned after a fever wiped out the clergy. Yet, our satellite imagery and long-range drone flights confirmed a thriving, anachronistic community still inhabits the crumbling stone structures, which are now half submerged by a seasonal swamp. The initial drone footage showed villagers moving through the waterlogged plaza with an uncanny ease, their clothes perpetually dry. Their leader is referred to only as El Padre, a figure never seen outside the cathedral's central tower. A NightHowl reconnaissance team, embedded with a documentary crew studying isolated cultures, made first contact in 2022. Team lead Ortega's first report noted the villagers' preternatural health and the complete absence of insects or reptiles in the area. The only animals were large, black caimans that floated motionless in the murky waters, their eyes glinting with an unusual, intelligent awareness. The team's botanist took a water sample. The analysis revealed an incredibly high concentration of a unique stimulant alkaloid, exuded by a specific type of vine that choked the cathedral walls. The villagers, they realized, were not just living there. They were perpetually intoxicated by their environment. Ortega's logs described the village's daily ritual. At noon, when the sun was at its peak, the villagers would gather in the water before the cathedral. El Padre would appear on the high balcony, a silhouette against the bright sky. He would raise his hands, and the villagers would drink deeply from the swamp water. Their bodies would shudder, and their eyes would film over with a temporary, milky cast. In this state, they were placid, suggestible. Team Ortega also noted that the caimans would watch these rituals intently, and that the vines on the cathedral seemed to pulse faintly, as if with a slow circulation. The scent in the air was thick, cloying, a mix of rotting vegetation and overpoweringly sweet jasmine. On their fifth day, A team member, Reyes, accidentally cut his hand. A single drop of blood fell into the water. The effect was instantaneous. The placid caimans erupted into a frenzy, not towards Reyes, but towards the cathedral tower. The vines trembled. From the tower's dark opening, a figure emerged. El Padre was not a man. His robes were woven from living, flowering vines. His skin was like polished driftwood, and his fingers were long, root-like tendrils. Where his face should have been, there was a nest of pulsating, red blossoms that opened and closed like a dozen small, hungry mouths. A voice, like the creaking of a great tree, echoed across the water. You bring the salt of life unoffered. The garden thirsts. The vines from his body shot out, not at the team, but into the water, striking the frenzied caimans. The creatures were drained of moisture in seconds, collapsing into piles of desiccated scale and bone. The team extracted immediately under the cover of a sudden, unnatural downpour that seemed to weep from a clear sky. Subsequent satellite passes showed the village empty. The cathedral tower collapsed in on itself. The swamp waters receded, revealing the bones of countless animals and humans tangled in the root systems below. The official explanation was a sudden landslide and flash flood. File classified under Verdant Protocol. The entity, codenamed the Bloom, is assessed as a phytomorphic vampire, a consciousness that fused with the local flora and developed a symbiotic, addictive relationship with the human population, using them as both guardians and a source of psychic nourishment. The region is now considered neutralized, but we maintain soil and water sampling on a decadal basis. The jungle has a long memory, and seeds can lie dormant for centuries. Case File NHF 237. The glass-fleshed watchers of Vostochnaya Zvezda, Siberia. The mining outpost of Vostochnaya Zvezda, Eastern Star, was established in the 1950s in one of the most remote and inhospitable regions of Siberia. It was officially shuttered in 1987 due to unsustainable operational costs. Our interest was sparked by a series of fragmented, heavily redacted KGB reports that mentioned luminous geological anomalies and personnel exhibiting progressive mineral transmutation. According to these files, the outpost was not built to mine for gold or diamonds, but to contain and study a unique form of obsidian that wept a viscous, silver fluid. The project was codenamed Rasvit, or Dawn. The current inhabitants are the descendants of the original scientific and military personnel who have become something else entirely. A NightHowl aerial survey in 2018 detected a persistent, low-level thermal signature emanating from the central compound, despite the site having no official power source. Long-range microphones picked up structured, complex vocalizations that were neither human nor animal. They were described in the log as the sound of crystalline structures growing under immense pressure, given voice. Our only ground contact was a geologist named Anya Petrova, the granddaughter of the project's lead scientist. In her first and only communication, she wrote, "They no longer eat. They no longer sleep. They simply watch. And they are so beautiful. Grandfather says the cold is a blessing. Keeps us pure." Petrova's subsequent messages, sent over a period of 3 months, detailed a horrifying transformation. The silver fluid, which she called starlight sap, was not a resource. It was a symbiotic organism. Prolonged exposure caused the human body to slowly vitrify. She described her neighbor's skin taking on the quality of polished moonstone, their eyes becoming faceted jewels that refracted light in impossible ways. They sustained themselves not on blood, but on the extreme cold, drawing some form of sustenance from the absolute zero of the Siberian winter. The scent she described was of ozone and crushed flint. The sounds were of gentle chimes and the faint, constant crackle of settling frost. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their passage marked by the soft ringing of glass on stone. Petrova's final transmission was a photograph, so heavily corrupted it took months to reconstruct. It showed the interior of the main research bunker. Dozens of the watchers stood in silent, perfect rows, their bodies now fully translucent, revealing intricate crystalline latticeworks where their organs should have been. At the head of the room stood a towering figure, unmistakably her grandfather, encased in a magnificent, prismatic carapace of pure black obsidian and silver veins. His eyes were pools of liquid mercury. Petrova's last text read, "He says we are evolving, that we will outlast the sun. He has asked me to join them in the deep chamber. The sap is so beautiful. I can hear it singing. I think I will." The transmission terminated. A sanctioned NightHowl expedition reached the outpost in the dead of winter 2021. They found the compound intact, pristine, and utterly silent. Every structure was empty. There were no signs of struggle, no personal effects, no bodies. In the central bunker, they found Petrova's parka and satellite phone, lying neatly on the floor. Next to them was a single, perfect rose, sculpted from living, breathing ruby. It was warm to the touch. As the team retreated, their thermal scanners detected movement in the surrounding forest. Dozens of humanoid heat signatures, colder than the ambient air, standing perfectly still among the trees, watching. They made no move to approach or interfere. This file is sealed under Absolute Zero Protocol. The entities, codenamed the Crystalline Chorus, are not classified as hostile. They are post-predatory. They have transcended the need for traditional sustenance and exist in a state of perpetual silent observation. The outpost of Vostochnaya Zvezda is now a prohibited zone, a monument to a form of immortality we cannot comprehend and must not disturb. They are waiting for what our archives cannot yet say. These 5 files from our archives confirm what humanity has long forgotten, that the night is not empty. It is governed by rules older than any kingdom, and those who break them seldom live to tell the tale. From the earthbound geophage of Valea Umbrei, to the tidal consciousness of Kuroshio, from the soul-drinking silence of Glen Cailleach, the verdant thirst of San Jerónimo, to the transcendent, frozen watch of Vostochnaya Zvezda. They do not see us as peers or even as enemies. We are either sustenance, servants, or simply ephemeral. The moon never shines on innocence, and these ancient lords rule in shadows we are not meant to pierce. If you have encountered something you believe belongs in our records, a place where the rules of nature seem rewritten, a local legend that feels too specific, too real, submit your account in the comments below. The Order reviews all testimonies. Some are chosen for investigation. Your silence could be the one that condemns others. Subscribe to NightHowl Files and keep your lanterns close. The shadows move quickly, and the next name in these archives could be yours. This has been a declassified transmission from the NightHowl files. Until the next moon rises, stay awake, stay wary, and never walk alone.